Good morning, and welcome back to GDC Mobile 2008. I'm very excited to greet you today. We have a super program lined up, a super keynote speech, an awards ceremony, and a number of terrific talks. I'm Robert Tersick. I'm the founding chairman of GDC Mobile. Very happy to welcome you all back. Just a reminder, if you could please turn your cell phones to silent mode while you're in the conference room. Might want to take care of that now. When you walked in the door, you were given an evaluation form, and again, it would be helpful for us if you could complete those evaluation forms. We care deeply about the quality of the programming here, and those evaluation forms are what help us determine which speakers we're able to provide you with useful content, useful information, and that helps us in evaluating the program for next year. GDC Mobile is a big task. I can't do it single-handedly. I get tremendous support from the advisory board. The members of the advisory board come from all over the world, and they help me. If you're interested to learn more about GDC Mobile, if you're interested to submit a talk for next year, please let me know or speak to one of the advisory board members. They're all present today. We welcome the contributions of those who wish to submit talks. And for those who did submit a talk that was not selected, please, I want to encourage you to try again next year. We had several hundred submissions. I think what we did pick were a series of terrific talks. We're always trying to find new ways to insert more talks into the tracks, so we welcome your submissions. And I'd be very happy to talk to anyone who's curious about that process after this. There's one other note, one more housekeeping note as people get their seats. If anyone from the UK dropped their passport on their way in, I know there's a lot of partying going on. Some people might be not functioning with all cylinders this morning. I can read the name. Anne Varel. Oh no, wait, that's the emergency contact. Stuart Varel. Does anyone know Stuart Varel? All right, well, if you hear of him or if you hear of someone from the UK who's looking for a passport, I've got it. I'd be very happy to share it with him. Well, what's your impression of the show? Yesterday, I was actually very encouraged. I spoke to dozens of people about the program. I tried to talk to publishers and developers, and I got a sense of hopefulness for 2008. I think 2007 was a tough year in many respects for many people in this field. It was also a boring year in terms of innovation. It was hard to find examples of innovation. And so I got the sense yesterday that there's a very hopeful perspective, that there's a change coming. Maybe there's some shifts that will occur that will be painful. But in general, there's an outlook of prosperity for 2008 and beyond. Hopeful is not the same thing as wishful. There's also a lot of wishful thinking. For instance, I've heard a lot of people speculate in a wishful manner about the Apple iPhone. I'm personally a skeptic. If you've talked to anyone in the music industry, you'll know that there's a possibility, if we shift over to an iTunes model, we might be going from the frying pan into the fire. Those who don't like laboring under the yoke of the mobile operator might find that iTunes is the ultimate storefront with ultimate pricing power, ultimate control over merchandising, and ultimate control over product selection. Think twice about what you wish for. Other examples of wishful thinking. Yesterday I was intrigued by our keynote speaker, Michel Guillemont from Gameloft. I thought it was a very compelling speech. And in particular, I was impressed by his vision for a Japanese-style portal that would be managed by individual publishers. And while that was a compelling vision, I couldn't help notice that there was kind of an ironic juxtaposition, because just a few slides earlier, Michel had shown us how his entire business process is designed to support the current ecosystem set up by carriers. And by that I mean he put up a slide that showed the brutal economic calculus of porting. This porting activity is non-economic activity in service of the current business model. That is, a mobile operator wishes to tell its customers that a game will run equally well on every one of its 200 handsets. We know that that's not true. And yet publishers labor intensely to try to make that happen. And they do it in exchange for deck slots, positioning, and other favors from the carrier. Well, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the exact same thing over and over again and hope for a different outcome. That's the difference between wishful thinking and thinking that will cause a change. So it's one thing to say that we wish for a Japanese-style portal business, But when the company spends 90% of its activity in support of the current business, well then, that strikes me as kind of an insane pattern. A dysfunctional relationship between the big publishers and the big carriers exists today. The big publishers are embracing the carriers in service of a lie. It's a lie that says any game can run on any handset. And it's a lie that says that a top 10 list that never changes offers consumers the illusion of choice. There are many examples of what happens when you treat your customers poorly. Most recently, we've seen it here in the US as mobile operator Sprint, which used to have a commanding share of the mobile game business, saw its customers leave en masse this year. Walt Mossberg, the journalist from the Wall Street Journal, refers to mobile operators as the Soviet ministries. And in terms of the game business, it's an apt analogy. They run a command economy. A rather indifferent mid-level manager with very little knowledge of the game business is going to make a decree and tell a publisher, comrade, the people have decided which handsets your games should run on. And the people have decided which brands are going to be featured this week in our deck. This is an economy that's based on a fiction. And it's caused me some trouble over the last few years because I've been wondering when this would change. What causes me to be hopeful about 2008 is that I start to see a sense of change. I'm starting to see around the edges of our industry some innovation, some much needed innovation. I don't expect it to come from major companies. The big publishers, frankly, are tied up in this ecosystem with the carriers. The change is going to come from developers like you. But what you need is a champion that challenges you to think not about a fictional universe where choice is decreed to customers who are captive, but rather to think about a real-world economy where people make real decisions based on real choices, where publishers and developers are free to develop for the platforms that they feel are the best place to express their creative vision. And so I ask you to consider this morning, what would happen if we operated in a new context? What would happen if we operated in the context of the real world? What kinds of games would you make if you had the freedom to decide what kinds of experiences you wanted to give people? What handsets would you choose to support? Would you choose to support 200 handsets for every single game, or would you choose only those handsets that you knew were going to perform, where you knew the purchasing would happen? What kinds of pricing models would we see publishers experiment if the price points weren't decreed by the mobile operators in advance? Which brands, if any, would be licensed by publishers if we didn't need to scramble for deck space and favors from carriers in order to get our goods?